running both events, the World Masters and the Commonwealth, concurrently. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So let me do the official introduction. Dr. Nigel Plummer, welcome to Coffee and Conversations with Champions. This is the powerlifting edition. I came up with that name because I started these series of podcasts a year and a bit ago, the World Bench Press Championships at Sun City in South Africa. And I was struggling to get athletes to come and talk to me. So I pulled out my Nespresso machine and some pods, and then everybody wanted a cup of coffee. So I said, well, it comes at a price. And that's how we kicked it there. So welcome. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Really do appreciate it. So just to start off, could you give us a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of a background? I know we're fortunate enough to have chatted on my radio show, but just for these listeners, who is Dr. Nigel Plummer, microbiologist, gut health expert?
Okay, so I'm as Nicholas says, I'm a microbiologist. I've been a microbiologist for a long time now. I graduated from Surrey University. I worked for Pfizer, developing and manufacturing antibiotics for a number of years, and then moved into a different sphere. Started my own company where we were looking at this element that we call the microbiome now, which is this fantastically complex and incredibly functional community of bacteria that we have living mainly in our gut, but also on our skin and any of the surfaces that we have our body, like our mouth, genitourinary tract, and so on. Each of them has one of these, what we call a microbiome. And over the past 20 years, what we've understood is the importance of this microbiome. Not just in terms of let's say gut health, but it has an incredibly important part of that, because our gut is connected to most of our other physiology. So to our immune system, to our neural system in our brain, to our metabolic system. Our gut is connected in a significant way, and because the microbiome is such an important and functional part of our gut, our microbiome is connected and has an incredibly important influence on how our gut interacts with these other parts of our body. And as a result of that we have a research interest. I mean, I have a team of 12 scientists. We've published over the last 20 years over 120 original scientific articles. Sure. And that includes 35 clinical trials done on things called probiotics, which we have developed. And I'm sure that most of the people listening to this will know about probiotics, that have heard of probiotics. There's lots of probiotics as supplements that are on the shelves now. And we have become a global leader in that. And the last part of this introduction, I suppose, we've become a global leader and a global supplier to many, many brands, including some of the brands that some of the powerlifting guys who are listening to this, and the strength coaches, strength athletes that are listening to this, some of the brands which they're already using, we will supply with probiotics and other types of dietary supplement. The point is that what we're understanding now is, like I was saying, that the microbiome has an impact to many parts of our body, not just our gut. And so probiotics have an impact on many parts of our physiology and pathologies, not only our gut. And that's what we'd like to explore today.
Absolutely. Fantastic introduction. I mean, there were so many things that sort of hit me when we were chatting on Monday, even the connection to our lungs and the connection to, every single thing that's going on in our body, versus sort of the gut versus the skin. You think your skin's your largest organ. It's absolutely mind-blowing. For strength athletes, and chatting to the guys who are coming out to South Africa, or any of the strength athletes competing, it can come down to a matter of half a kilo. whether you win. So world records are set in half a kilo increments. Otherwise, usually it's 2.5 kilos that we're going up in weight. But it's the really, really small amounts of weight. And just in terms of your strength, your endurance, international travel, all of these things can have effect on, as we feel it as an athlete, you see it as a coach, the energy, the energy that you're bringing to the warm up. The warm up, it's quite an extended period of time. The competition's going for a few hours. You may be cutting weight coming into the competition, so you're not feeling your best. How big effect does the gut and our microbiome have on our energy levels, our ability to pick up energy? Because maybe, we have athletes that are feeling a bit flat because there's something not right going on inside, and they're trying to supplement that with energy drinks or caffeine, or these are I'm almost coming at the end of the whole training thing, but so let's start with the competition and then we can work our way back from that. So how big an influence is what's going on inside on our
Okay,
performance?
that's a big
Yeah.
question, Nicholas.
Yep.
Let me just outline just some of the things there, just to put a few facts
Mm.
that put this importance of our
Yeah.
gut to the rest of our body in context. So so for instance, our immune system, and our immune
Mm-hmm.
system is important to everyone. Our immune system is important to everyday
Mm-hmm.
people, if you like, but also very important to athletes. And bear in mind that athletes tend to have a slightly compromised immune
Yes.
system because they are because of the they're almost under a system of chronic physiological stress. So mild, but so not acute
Mm-hmm.
physiological stress, but chronic physiological stress, often resulting from continuously elevated amounts of cortisol that produces this physiological
Mm-hmm.
stress, and that undermines the immune system. Now, 80% of the immune system is in our gut, which is a lot of people don't
Sure.
understand that, but 80% of our immune system is in our gut, and which again immediately tells you, okay, if you're going to have an impact on your immune system, then you need to have an impact on your gut immune system, because
Mm-hmm.
80% of your immune system is there. But also, the immune system in the gut is connected to all the other kind of major immune centers in the body. So we have a major immune center in our respiratory tract, our lungs, which is, and if you do something that impacts your gut immune system, it will communicate that to your um, respiratory tract immune system.
Right.
So to give an example of that, we gave in one of our clinical trials, we gave probiotics, and we gave it to adults and to children. And what we were looking for was an impact on upper respiratory tract infections, so coughs, colds, and flu. And what we found is that by giving the probiotic for a period of 6 months every day, we significantly decreased, both in children and in adults, their frequency and severity of developing upper respiratory tract infections. So
Sure.
coughs, colds, and
Mm.
flu type symptoms. That was very important because for all sorts of reasons, but there's no reason why that shouldn't impact, let's say, a power lifter, for instance. I mean,
Yeah.
and probably even more so because, as I say, their immune systems are slightly compromised, or slightly under
Mm-hmm.
what's the word, under 100% par.
Yeah. We could say
Um,
under load.
Under load,
Load. Yep.
absolutely, and to go on from that, but in a very specific way, to kind of, as I say, spark the interest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have done a lot of work looking at endurance athletes. Now, not necessarily the type of athletes that you guys are, the strength guys, but we're looking at triathletes,
Mm-hmm.
marathon runners, people who are going into the Ironman competition, where it's pretty intense, but you'd
Yes.
probably call it endurance in a different way to you guys. And in very, very consistent effects, what we're seeing is that by giving probiotics of a certain type, we can enhance performance.
Sure.
And you might and some of the impacts that we're seeing are something between a 5 and 10% reduction in race times,
Sure.
which is significant. So,
That's
and to give
massive.
you
Yeah.
another example,
Mm.
we've done and all of these are published trials.
Mm-hmm.
We did some work whereby we had runners who were running in stressed conditions. So they're running to exhaustion. So
Right.
running to exhaustion in high heat, high humidity conditions. And the reason we do that is just that it just accelerates
Right.
that. So, and what we found is that the people who are on the probiotics, they were able to. It took them longer to reach that point of exhaustion compared to the people who are not on the probiotics. We did a trial in this thing called the Marathon de Sable, which is
Mm-hmm.
this um, uh, ultra running exercise. So it's run in the Sahara Desert. It's one marathon a day for 7 days,
Sure.
and what we saw there was a 5 to 6% improvement in their time. So that was like 5 hours difference
Mm-hmm.
in the people
Sure.
who are on the probiotics compared to the ones who are not on probiotics. So you might say, well, okay, if this is what we're seeing an enhancement of performance. How is that happening? And we're seeing this we see this as a multifaceted uh, um, element. And
Mm-hmm.
let me explain that, and your listeners and viewers can sort of pick out what they think might be relevant to them.
Right.
So the first thing, um, uh, we see an impact directly on gut health. So a lot of endurance athletes have symptoms that are very commonly have
Mm-hmm.
symptoms that are like IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, and those symptoms include things like intermittent abdominal pain, which may vary from a severity point of view,
Mm-hmm.
intermittent periods of diarrhea and constipation, often oscillating,
Okay. Sure.
and very importantly, bloating.
Mm-hmm.
So bloating, intermittent abdominal pain, different periods of constipation and diarrhea. If this sounds familiar to some of your athletes, this is the type of thing that these endurance athletes suffer from. Some people might remember there's been occasions when marathon runners have been running. Paula Radcliffe, I think, in the Olympic final
Yes.
or the World Championship marathon, she had to literally go off course because when you've got to go,
Go.
you've
Yeah.
got to go, and if you want to go for a pee, they just let it run down their legs. But if you want to, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. It was the other one, and
Yeah.
so she had to go and then come back, and that is the type of thing that actually happens with these athletes. So
Right.
we have, and what we've shown is that by taking the probiotic, we've shown it in IBS and we've shown it in these athletes as well. We can significantly decrease these um, GI tract symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So, if bloating, for instance, is one of the things that is a problem for powerlifters and strength athletes generally, this is probably going to help. The other thing that we saw that we've
Mm.
measured is that probiotics we have an ability. So, a lot of endurance athletes during the race they take these glucose drinks
Mm-hmm.
or glucose syrups. And we've measured this, and what we have found is that by taking the probiotic a month before the event, what happens is that the probiotic has an ability in stimulating the glucose receptors in the gut.
Okay.
So these athletes can uptake more glucose when they're running than if they haven't been taking the probiotic. This directly contributes to the performance enhancement that we're seeing. And what we actually measured there was we measured oxidation of the glucose and other carbohydrates and
Mm-hmm.
oxidation of fat, because as you run out of carbohydrate as an energy source, so
Mm-hmm.
you first start with ATP
Mhm.
which gives you 10 seconds of about 10 to 20 seconds of no less than that. It's about 5 seconds of instantaneous
Mhm.
energy. Then you run into creatine, and creatine gives you then another 20, 30 seconds of intense energy. And then you start looking at things like glycogen. And once
Mhm.
you run out of all of those, then you start utilizing fats. And
Mhm.
what we found was that in this experiment that we did, by the enhancement of glucose uptake, we delayed the utilization of fat. And that was
Okay.
very, very clear. So that may have applications to your guys. Nicholas, you were
Mhm.
saying that that and I suppose I didn't realize this, but when it's a powerlifting event, I mean, this is not just a couple of minutes. This
Yeah,
is this is this is over a number of
of ours.
hours,
Mhm.
and this may then have an impact, because it's not 5 minutes of intense activity and then nothing for 2 hours. It's,
Mm.
from what I understand, from what you're saying, it's there's there's a lot of activity going on with
Yes,
peaks,
correct. That's it.
but there's still activity going on. And I don't know whether your guys, during that 5 hour period, whether they're taking nutrients or
Mhm.
taking glucose or whatever it might be, but this, I think, is could potentially have a benefit to the strength athletes and powerlifters as well.
So it.
And then
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Go
sorry,
ahead. Yep.
and then the other impacts that we're seeing. So probiotics can have an impact in terms of directly on gut health,
Mhm.
directly on immunity,
Mhm. That's huge.
directly on um, energy utilization, and as I say, whether that stimulation of glucose uptake is relevant to your guys, I
Mm.
don't really know. They can decide that, and you can decide that. The other element is that what we see with probiotics, with this, there is a gut brain connection. So
Mhm.
probiotics have an impact on our mood, on our state of energy, our state of health. We call it quality of life.
Yeah.
And so what we've measured with probiotics, people who are on probiotics have a greater quality of sleep, a
Mhm.
greater feeling of well-being, a greater feeling of energy. And
Right.
what we see, this kind of mental kind of thing, is that translates to potentially that they want to train more because they're
Mhm.
feeling better. They want to train harder because they're feeling better.
Yeah.
They
They've
feel good. They
recovered better.
feel
Huh?
like they've got a
Mhm.
lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so you combine all of those effects, and we see that encompassed in performance, because that's why athletes are a really, really good cohort,
Mhm.
because we see them as being healthy,
Yes.
which they're generally healthy people. But from a scientific point of view,
Mhm.
it's really difficult to measure somebody's already healthy, measuring and increasing their healthiness.
Yes.
That's actually, when you think about it, it's quite difficult. What do you measure?
Mm.
They're already healthy. So what do you measure that can give you an idea? Well, by taking this, they're actually healthier. And
Right.
athletes are a really good example of that, because they measure effectively their state of health by their performance. If they're not
Absolutely.
feeling so great,
Yeah.
their performance is going to suffer. If they're feeling really good,
Yes.
then their performance, I would suggest, is going to be improved. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So, in a nutshell, I suppose that's where we are.
That's it. So if we break it down, and those are incredible points, I've got a ton of ideas in my head to chat about. So hopefully the brain health is good. If we look at the immune system, and I think that's core, that's the key. Sorry, crikey, I was going to say I have cup size envy now, Doc. Cheers.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I drink an awful lot of tea. This is
tea.
tea. It's not
Okay,
coffee. But
fair enough. Mm. So, first off, with every international competition, more likely than not, you're going to be traveling. If you're fortunate, it's still a regional trip. and it's a couple of hours in the car, but it's still hotel food. For most people, it's a couple of flights and then staying in a hotel. It's into different time zones, so your sleep might be effective. And what happens leading up to the competition is you building up to your maximum weights. So you really under your most stress and load. Then you may have a week or two where you back off just to work technique to give the body a chance to recover, and then coming out to the other. So if your immune system is not on point, you're traveling through all these airports, coming across potential diseases, bugs that your body's not used to. So immune health and therefore your gut health is vital, because you can have done everything right, but if you pick up a bug, if you're immune compromised, you're getting sick, you're not going to be able to perform.
Yeah.
So that's on that level. On the which is, I think, the biggest challenge that I've seen, and just speaking about bloating for powerlifters, where you are wearing a belt to support you in squat and in deadlift, often in bench press. For equipped lifters, they're putting on the world's tightest shirt. I mean, because the shirt helps them lift potentially even a few extra, 100 kilos, 150, maybe even 200 kilos, which is just insane. And that any compression of the gut becomes very unhealthy. If you
Mm.
bloat too much, your belt might not even fit, and that then puts you at risk within the competition. And I think just very uncomfortable. But the nutrient uptake, and I've seen this with my athletes, if you can imagine that you have a 6 a.m. weigh-in and you are now you're lifting at 8 and your weight is questionable. So if you don't make the weight in your category either up or down, so I lift in 105 kilos, which means I cannot be over 105 kilos and I cannot be below 93. If I'm coming in and after travel I'm retaining fluid, I'm bloating because my gut's not good. So I might retain a little bit of fluid with travel, but if I'm going to bloat, then I'm going to be retaining more weight than is necessary.
Yes.
Than I should be. Now that means I might not be able to eat for 12, 18 hours, or even drink for 12 or 18 hours before I weigh in, because I want to try and reduce my weight, which means my
Yes.
energy is going to be compromised. Then once I do my weigh in, I'm able to eat. I need to make sure that I can refuel my body, not just in terms of hydration, with sustained, stable energy. And this is the problem that I see with a lot of lifters at competition. They'll have burgers, they'll have steak, they'll try some of these drinks, they eat sweets. So they're spiking. The biggest thing is stable energy, because you start with a big lift, which is the squat. You'll do 3 of those on the platform. You still have to warm up to that, but you finish on
Mm.
the deadlift. So you can't burn out your energy before you get to your deadlifts, and then competitions are won on the deadlift. So stable energy, good nutrient uptake. So if you've got healthy gut, if the endurance athletes, and this is why I'm so grateful that we're able to chat about this, can have an extra 5% or 10% because of the extra absorption, that can make a difference to your third deadlift attempt. It's vital.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. And I think, yes. I mean, I think and I think that, I mean, I suppose, yes. I mean, as you go through, um, uh, and I imagine that the athletes, that they're eating during the day. When we
mm.
would think of this competition day of let's say 5 hours,
Yes.
I assume that they're eating something, that they're drinking, that they're eating, and I assume that there is some kind of rapid energy
Yeah.
um, source in there somewhere. So whether it's an energy drink, whether it's
Hmm.
um, uh,
Or
I
the
would have
goo,
thought that that's where
those carbo. Yeah, the same thing as the endurance runners. They're taking those
same thing
same
as
type of yeah.
drink, and they would have and as such, which I didn't realize. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you would see the same type of
Perfect.
benefits.
Mm.
What we've also seen, and this might be even more applicable. We've seen that there's that by taking probiotics, and when we're saying that we're taking probiotics, it needs to be probably, this is not an instantaneous thing.
Yes.
It needs to
Yeah.
be like a month, even though the effects start to occur within days. You need to allow that effect to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate
Hmm.
and reach, if you like, maximum benefit. So you need to be looking at least 1 month before an event to be starting to take
Hmm.
probiotics. But what we've seen as well is a reduction in lactic acid buildup in
Okay.
muscles,
Sure.
which I think in terms of, I always think of it as being the 400 meters runner
Yes.
who who is doing what I was saying. They've burned through their ATP,
Mm.
they've burnt through the creatine, and then it's slow energy in that final 100 meters, which is where they tie up, and the thing and the lactic acid buildup in the muscles impairs their performance dramatically. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a problem with a power lifter. Maybe that lactic acid buildup is not a major issue because it's not a repetitive um,
Yes. So
exercise.
So you are working, for example, warming up to the squats. You're warming up for squats, and you're doing your maximal squats. Then you move into bench press, where your legs are getting a bit of a break, but your legs and your legs and your back get involved in the bench press. But that recovery can also hammer, where then the legs are hammered and your back is hammered for deadlift because of the lactic acid. And coaches build that into their game plan, where they may not go maximal on the squats in order to save the back for the
Right.
deadlifts. If they're able to go maximal in the squats, then they can be posting far greater numbers, knowing that it's the recovery is going to be there. The management of the lactic acid is going to be better in 2 hours' time, for the bench, for the deadlifts.
Yes, and one of the other things I
Mm,
was just going to
mm,
introduce there, Nicholas, which was when you were saying about the training periods
mm-hmm,
building up to the event, that there might be 3 or 4 weeks, and then you have a like a week or two where you
mm-hmm,
sort of concentrate more upon technique rather than the intense training. Um, and and one of the things that we found, so and that continuous training provides, if
mm,
it produces stress, and we've already
yeah,
said that, that the chronic physiological stress that intense and almost continuous training does, um, it induces cortisol production,
mm-hmm,
and cortisol has a suppressive effect on your immune system, which is why athletes tend to have a slightly suppressed immune system. But the other thing that is also becoming more apparent now is that stress has other impacts. So on your gut, for instance. So what we
mm-hmm,
see is that a thing called intestinal permeability or leaky
mm-hmm.
gut.
Yes.
This increases during, if you like, intensive training, and it increases during the event as well. So again, what we saw, we did a trial with people who are doing the Barcelona triathlon,
Mm-hmm,
and we measured their intestinal permeability, and we measured it 12 weeks before the race, and we had a baseline,
right.
12 weeks before the race. They then intensively trained up until the race, and then we then measured the intestinal permeability 6 days after the race.
Mm-hmm,
What we found was that from baseline before they started the intense training to the day of the race, intestinal permeability increased significantly in the people who were not taking probiotics. And
okay.
then the race itself significantly increased the intestinal permeability again. In the probiotic group, it didn't happen. No intestinal permeability
Sure.
increase during
Mm-hmm.
the intensive training period or during the race. So So stress caused by intensive training can have a number of effects:
Mm-hmm.
reduction in immune function, increase in intestinal permeability that can lead to all sorts of things, because that can also compromise the immune system. It can involve, it can end up in uh, uh, if somebody is allergic, for instance, an increase in
Yes.
that in the allergic symptoms, or if they have intolerances, it
Hmm.
can increase their level of intolerances, and it can suppress the immune system even more. So, it's just something again, for your listeners and viewers to
Hmm.
actually take in mind. And I would, I suppose I would, because probably there's some people saying, well, okay, these things called probiotics seem to have these, you know,
Magical.
multiple
Yeah.
benefits, almost
Yes.
magical,
Yeah.
and that is, to put it into context, because from a scientific point of view, probiotics have now, they've over the last 10 years they've become the most rapidly growing segment of the dietary supplement
Hmm.
marketplace. People are calling them the vitamins of the 21st century.
Right.
Um, they are now, if you look at in terms of sales in the USA marketplace, probiotics have overtaken omega threes in terms of
Okay. Sure.
sales volume. So they're
Hmm.
they're no longer a
Hmm.
niche type or category of dietary supplement. They're very much mainstream now. So what is driving this? And the most important factor that is driving this is exactly what we've been talking about through the whole of this podcast, is that
Hmm.
what we're seeing is that probiotics have a consistent effect, but the more that we look, the more universal that effect is, that probiotics simultaneously are having benefits on many, many parts of our physiology at the same time. And
Right.
to that's different to a lot of type of supplementation that we take, where we might take it for a single benefit. This is what we're
Hmm.
seeing, is that there's multiple benefits at the same time, and that is expressed an increase in general health, in general well-being, and, as I say, in athletes, in performance. And so the other point that is immediately, and particularly from an athlete's point of view, um, uh, in terms of dosage and whether you can overdose. And that's one of the other
Right.
things about probiotics. You can't
Hmm.
overdose. It's impossible. Um, if you overdosed, if you were to take a bucket full of probiotics, the most the biggest symptom you'll see is a little bit of mild diarrhea. But I
Right.
would offer that you take a bucket full of anything, you'll get a bit of mild diarrhea. You take a bucket full of tomatoes, you'll get a bit of mild diarrhea.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a bucket full of beer fairly frequently, and
Yeah.
I'll get a little bit of mild diarrhea. So,
Right.
so just from an athlete's point of view, because of all the things that are going
Mm.
on, they can be assured that there's no level of sort of overdose in these
Risk of the
products.
overdose. You mentioned sleep as well, and also just to touch on the stress element. Powerlifting is an amateur sport, so these athletes that are working so hard, putting the time in at the gym, training, getting the representing their national team, you get picked to represent your country. The stress levels go up, the expectation goes up, but they're all working jobs, or they're working as students, they're running families. So the time that they have to train is usually, from what I've seen, they're already pretty tired. They're either coming in early in the morning, they're going in late. So the stress on the body, the stress on the immune system is already much greater than for a professional athlete looking at the sport of powerlifting. And how effective sleep is vital, because sleep is recovery. If you're sleeping well, if you have limited time to sleep, but you're sleeping much better, you can perform much better, and the coach can do more work with you to prepare you for the platform. How are the effects on sleep?
The sleep, I mean, as I say,
Mm.
it's one of these multiple benefits. We've just, again, bearing in mind that when we're talking about clinical trials that we've done where we've shown an improvement in sleep, these are double-blinded,
Right.
placebo-controlled trials which have been published. So when it's double-blinded, I'm sure you guys know, but when it's double-blinded, the participant doesn't know whether they're
Hmm.
taking placebo or the active, and the person who is administering it, the people who are doing the trial, they don't know either. It is double blinded from each side. So
Hmm.
when you get a significant result and a significant difference, it is real,
Right.
and that's what we've seen as part of this kind of what we call quality of life, um, we don't know the exact mechanisms yet, and this is not it's not a magnitude of difference. Like, so say somebody is completely insomniac.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like them taking a sleeping pill and then
Yes.
being, being comatose for 8 hours.
Right.
That is, you're not going to have that effect. But what we're seeing is that the effect is general, but specific as well. In that we saw, so that the participants in this trial reported a
Mm-hmm.
greater quality of sleep, so longer sleep and more and less fitful sleep.
Right.
Um, but that was tied up with better mood.
Mm-hmm.
So, so they had, which I think is almost just as important. They had they reported feeling better, a better sense of energy, a better sense of well-being overall, and almost like a sort of calming.
Mm-hmm.
So, and all of these, I think, contribute to this better sleep element. But it was there, and I think it's again, it's a very important aspect. But if you were to ask me exactly what that mechanism is,
Mm-hmm.
it's we don't really know, uh, other than the fact that what, as I say, the probiotics, and we've done another. I
Mm-hmm.
should mention this. We've done another trial where we looked at a thing called trait anxiety, which is
Right.
certainly something that probably affects. So anxiety affects a lot of people,
Yes.
whether you call it stress,
Mm-hmm.
and look at it in a positive way, or whether you call it anxiety in a slightly negative way. But most people. So we measured a thing called trait anxiety, and in healthy adults, and trait anxiety is, how can I describe it? It's almost like, sometimes, like in a month, you might have those like 2 or 3 days where you just feel
Mm-hmm.
sort of threatened and vulnerable, and
More
worried and
self-doubt, less
anxious
confidence.
about
Yeah.
self-doubt,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like you feel a bit threatened and vulnerable, and worried
Right.
about everything, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not quite sure why. And then, you know, 2 or 3 days later, you kind of and you feel a bit down. It's a
Right.
down thing as well. And then 2 or 3 days later, your circumstances haven't really changed, but you feel better about
Mm-hmm.
everything. You don't feel as threatened, don't feel as anxious. That period, don't feel as down and as blue.
Mm-hmm.
That period of 2 or 3 days is called trait anxiety, and we all kind of probably know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about there.
Yep.
We've experienced that sort of thing where you can't really explain it, and it disappears for most people. That's trait anxiety. And what we showed was that, again, by taking the probiotic, that it's another element of quality of life, that we are able to reduce that significantly, reduce the levels of trait anxiety in
Mm.
healthy adults. All of
Sure.
these things combine, Nicholas, into, as I was saying right at the start, that
Mm.
what we're seeing is that of any type of supplement out there, from a general supplementation point of view, what we're beginning to see just globally, not just for athletes, but globally, that probiotics, or holistically,
Mm.
probiotics are able to offer um, uh, uh, almost a full spectrum of benefits at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, and that would be applicable to strength athletes as much as it's applicable to, if you like, the normal man
Right.
in the street. Not
The
that your
general
strength
public.
athletes are not normal men in the
Yep.
street as well.
Absolutely.
You go,
It. I think just touching on the anxiety aspect of it, that your gut health can also affect your mental state, right? Where and almost to quite a severe extent, if there's a lot wrong in the gut, your mental health can be quite adversely affected, and then obviously it can help
yes,
correct. Yeah.
there's many ways that the gut is connected
Mm-hmm.
to the brain. I mean, we have, just like I was saying earlier on, 80% of our immune system is in our gut.
Mm-hmm.
70% of our hormonal production is in our
Right.
gut. Our gut has a nervous system, or a neural system, second only to the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. So as I mentioned on your show the other day,
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas, I mean, our
Yep.
gut has more nerve endings than our skin. I mean,
Right.
when you
Sure.
think of how sensitive your skin is, and you think and how expansive your skin is, it's all over. You think that your gut has more nerve endings than that. It gives you an idea, and
Mm.
that neural system in the gut is intimately connected with our brain, and so we can connect to our brain via the nervous system. We can
Right.
connect to our brain via what we call immune communicators, things called cytokines that communicate inflammation, for instance, and we can communicate by chemical means as well. But just to give you an idea of that sort of cytokine thing, because inflammation is probably something that your guys know about, talk about
Absolutely.
quite a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. You build your whole
Chronic,
training. So yeah, you build your whole training cycles around managing that.
yes. And so chronic training or
Mm.
consistent intensive training brings about a level of low level chronic stress, but also low level chronic inflammation as
Mm-hmm.
well. And inflammation is communicated in the body by things called cytokines, and there are three primary cytokines that communicate communication. There's one called TNF alpha, so tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1, and interleukin 6. These are the three primary cytokines that
Mm-hmm.
communicate inflammation. And what probiotics can do, for instance, is and those, just to give you an idea. So
Mm-hmm.
you might think, well, um, when you get a cold or flu, um, why do you sometimes get a headache
Mm-hmm.
and you feel down? You want to be you want to be isolated and so on and so forth.
Yes.
That's purely so. What happens when you've got an acute inflammation episode, like let's say flu, which is in the upper respiratory tract?
Mm-hmm.
You're producing cytokines. Those cytokines then travel through the blood and they cross the blood-brain barrier and they communicate those same cytokines that are produced in the inflammatory center, which is the lung,
Right.
communicates to the brain. And there's one that's just called interleukin 6, which is one of the three primary cytokines, and that induces depression in
Sure.
the brain. So, and we know this because if you inject interleukin 6, then you can engender instant and severe depression in the person who is being injected with interleukin 6. But interleukin 6 is one of the three primary cytokines. So that's what I'm
Wow.
saying, is that
Mm-hmm.
how chemicals can impact our brain. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the last point on that, just to give you an idea, one of the things that probiotics do in terms of and how they affect the immune system, one of the things that they do is they stimulate anti-inflammatory cytokines. So
Okay.
they stimulate production of anti-inflammatory cytokines, things like interleukin 10 and a thing called transforming growth factor beta, TGF beta. These are
Yes.
anti-inflammatory cytokines, and they combat the inflammatory cytokines. So taking probiotics, one of the other things that it has an element of anti-inflammatory effects.
Right.
So
I'm just making notes. So it's almost that if you are prone to the depression, if you're prone to feeling down, the antibiotics can. Sorry, and maybe we also need to touch on antibiotics. Your probiotics can help counteract that and sort of
yes,
to lift your spirit.
yes, and as I say, in a
Mm.
number of different ways. So whether you want to see it as having having a positive impact on anxiety,
Yes.
having a positive
Sure.
impact in terms of mood,
Mm-hmm.
are they interconnected? And then having an impact upon sleep. And I think that's the whole thing, is that we're not just seeing one little element here. We're
Yes.
seeing, and that's where I was trying to get across. That's where the excitement of the microbiome and probiotics are coming from. Is that the more that we look, the more that we find all these things
Right.
are interconnected. And and as I say, to give you another example, we did a
Mm.
clinical trial um, with a probiotic where our primary outcome was weight loss,
Right.
and and we got some really interesting. It's the biggest trial that's ever been done in
Sure.
terms of weight loss. There was no calorific restriction at all. We didn't ask these people to alter their lifestyle in any way. So
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
exercise programs didn't alter them, didn't alter anything that they just took the probiotic.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found was that told them to take it over a 6 month period. And what we found was that they lost between 3 and 7 pounds more than the
Sure.
placebo group
Right.
over that. And somebody might say, well, that's not a huge amount, but this was in overweight people, not
Mm-hmm.
obese. So they
Yes.
weren't obese; they were overweight. They're like me, overweight but
Mm-hmm.
not obese.
Right.
And most of this came off the tummy,
Okay.
so it
Sure.
came off the little bit of you know
But
gut
that's also,
fat that
yeah,
we've all
that's
got.
also your that's your stress fat. That's your cortisol
Stress fat,
fat. Yeah.
absolutely, as a cortisol fat, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to, from a woman's point of view, they tend to call that stubborn, very difficult to get rid of fat, like a muffin top.
Yes.
And from a man, it's either the beer belly or the spare
Mm-hmm.
tire or whatever you want to call it. But what we saw was that was where this impact was had. It's certainly one of those things. If you want to lose 20 kilos or 10 kilos in
Mm-hmm.
3 months, whatever it is, then you're going to have to go on a calorie controlled diet. You have to drop your calorie. But this is
Yes.
doing nothing. It was doing nothing and removing this stuff. Now,
Sure.
so there was the weight loss effect.
Mm.
We also measured cholesterol, and we found that the product that we saw a significant reduction in LDL cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
This is a trial where we looked at well-being. So the sleep, the
Yes.
better mood, the better state of energy. This is all in the same trial. And the upper respiratory tract infection improvement was in the trial as well. We also saw a significant reduction in muscle pain and
Mm-hmm.
in headaches, all from the same trial. And
Right.
and I
Sure.
suppose that's what I'm trying to kind of
Get
get
to.
across here.
Yeah.
It's a
And
it's
I
a
think
it's a really interesting area.
the thing I think that the ultimate point here is that something works just because we don't understand it yet doesn't mean don't use it. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
don't use it for its advantage. So you're getting all of these wonderful advantages and benefits from taking probiotics. If we don't understand the intricacies yet on sleep, on these other systems, it doesn't mean don't take advantage of it
exactly.
and
No,
jump on it
exactly.
now. Just as a question, we for example we have athletes coming out to South Africa in a week to 10 days. Is that enough time to start to get a beneficial effect from the probiotics? Bearing in mind they'll probably be here for a week to 10 days as well anyway. So it would have been sort of a 20-day period of taking the probiotics.
Absolutely. I mean, I think okay. Ideally, it would be it'd be great if they'd have started earlier. But
Yes.
but if they will see you will see benefits. So
Mm-hmm.
so it, just to try and illustrate that we looked at that upper respiratory tract
Mm-hmm.
infection sort of trial, and what we measured is that over, let's say, 6 months, we had a 50% reduction in both the frequency and the severity of upper respiratory tract infections
Mm-hmm.
in adults.
Right.
But we actually looked at it and looked at when we started to see the effects, and the two lines, the placebo line and the active line,
Mm-hmm.
started to diverge within 7 days.
Okay.
So your full potential is only realized, let's say, after several weeks, but you start to see the benefits. That process
Mm-hmm.
of beneficial action starts within days. And one of the
Sure.
things about probiotics, one of my last things, when you take a lot of supplements,
Mm-hmm.
like a multivitamin or an omega-3 fatty acid, you're taking it almost, when you actually take it, you don't really see any
Mm.
benefit. It's
Yeah.
almost taken as a matter of
Out of faith. Yeah.
word, faith.
Mm.
Faith,
Mm. Mm.
exactly. I can guarantee you that the people who take probiotics, if they take a reasonable probiotic, a good
Mm-hmm.
probiotic, they will know that they have taken it. They will notice effects. Normally, those effects that they'll see will be a normalization of any gut
Mm-hmm.
problems that they have. So if they've got a little bit of diarrhea, a little bit of constipation, they'll see that normalize. They will know that they've taken the probiotic. And if any of your listeners or
Mm-hmm.
viewers are looking at this, some of them probably take probiotics already,
Mm-hmm.
but if they don't, then when they start taking them, I can guarantee you 50% of the time they will
Mm-hmm.
know
Yes,
that they're taking a
they're
probiotic.
taking it. Okay, fantastic. So was that our time up alarm? Yep.
But no, we're fine, Nicholas. We're
Okay,
fine. We're
good.
fine.
Thank you. So just the effect is, I mean, the effects that we feel, it's the evidence that it's working. You touched on good probiotics. How do people know they're taking a good probiotic? What should they be looking at? I was watching an interesting piece on one of the pain medication companies in Australia that got into a bit of trouble because they were selling pain medication for period pain, for headaches, for post exercise, all of these different things, but it was exactly the same medication chemically. So they got into a bit of, but that was also the placebo effect where people were going, oh well, it must be going here. So how do people
Yeah.
know sort of, yep, what's a good probiotic, where to start?
Okay. I mean, this is a difficult one. There are lots of
Mm,
probiotics on the marketplace now. There's a plethora of them,
mm,
and probiotics. I mean, in a nutshell, somebody should choose a probiotic that has clinical evidence for the condition they're looking to treat or for the health benefit that they're
mm-hmm,
actually looking for. So something, a probiotic that's got a clinical trial that says, okay, this is the health benefit that I've showed. This
mm,
is the reduction in the symptomology that I've shown for this. That's what they should be looking for. Now, sometimes that's very difficult to see. You go into the supermarket or
mm-hmm,
into the pharmacy, you can't see that whether that evidence is there or not. Um, uh, in the absence of that, I mean, we obviously make probiotics,
mm,
and we make, and as I say, most of the probiotics that we make for people are based upon our strains. Where I just said we have these 35 clinical trials.
mm-hmm,
So not necessarily looking at just promoting that sort of some of the brands that we do, but
mm-hmm,
in South Africa, our brand is called Proven.
mm-hmm,
Um, that is um, that's the probiotic that I've been talking about in the last um, uh, uh, whatever it is, 50
mm,
minutes.
yep,
Um, but we also make probiotics using the same strains, our
mm-hmm,
strains. We make them a company that people would have probably heard of, GNC.
right,
So
yes,
we make all of GNC's probiotics. So, and if there's people coming from the States, they'll know
mm-hmm,
GNC because there's a
yep,
GNC store in every. So those guys, and I say I'm using those brands not
mm,
because, but because it's very difficult to to from a from the person's point of view to discern what is a good
mm-hmm,
probiotic other than that, other than the fact that look for something that gives you at least 25 billion from the athlete's point of view. They
mm-hmm,
need to look at something that provides at least 25 billion on a per daily dose
right,
basis.
okay.
Um, and that's, it's
So
difficult
yeah. No, no, I
to
understand. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's not a sponsored podcast. We're just chatting. You've been kind enough
yeah.
to provide the information on your website. Is there access that people can get from the specific conditions or the probiotics that are available? That they
Yes.
can go in and review the trials because
So
that's what coaches love doing. Love to go and read and get the info.
yes. So if
No.
you go into
Mm-hmm.
so either Proven
Mm-hmm.
website, so that's Proven Probiotics website, or our strains are called Lab 4. So
Mm-hmm.
lab4probiotics.com or .co.uk,
Yep.
or just Google Lab 4, then Lab 4 Probiotics, it'll send you to our site. The Lab 4 Probiotics site gives you all of our research. All of the
Brilliant.
published papers are there, and they're summarized and so on and so forth, including the athletic ones and so on and so forth. And Provin is our branded website, so that will give you all of the various products.
Okay, fantastic. Just a couple more questions, if I may. Within powerlifting, what I love about the sport is you have athletes competing starting internationally from the age of 14, not four, sorry, 14, up to 94, 95. You've got people lifting and competing. Is it appropriate to be taking your probiotics at any of those ages? It's not a problem.
Yes,
Mm.
not a
All
problem
right.
at all. And think of it as being like this: that what are probiotics, and
Mm.
all that we're doing is taking this community of bacteria that we have in our gut, very complex community, and what we're doing is we're isolating the most beneficial strains, the
Mm-hmm.
most beneficial bacteria that are in there. And what we're doing is basically growing them up, put them into a capsule or a tablet, and asking people to take them
Mm-hmm.
and putting them into their bodies at greater numbers than are there normally
Right.
ex- to to exert an even greater benefit. In a nutshell, that's what probiotics are. They're the most beneficial strains in our microbiome that we put back via a supplement in higher numbers to exert an even greater benefit.
Benefit. Fantastic. That's wonderful. Can we sort of just finish on? I mean, is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't touched on?
I think we've gone through most things,
Yeah,
Nicholas. I think
quite
we've had a
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
It's been an intensive hour.
Yep. Sorry. Thank you. But you see, because you take your probiotics, you can. Absolutely. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Me too.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
100%.
No, it's true. It's
Um,
true enough.
Listen, I mean, it's what I try to explain to people is when you look after the system, you can do magnificent things. And
Yes.
I did 12, sorry, 10 1 hour podcasts pretty much in a 24 and a half hour period, starting at
Well,
9, Saturday night was 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. Saturday night, and finished at 9:30 on Sunday. So last night I finished, I think Monday night I finished 12:30. So,
well,
these long hours, minimal sleep, which I try to manage. And I think during our chat, on Monday, I think I was pretty chipper and cheerful. So all of
yes,
this, it's looking after the system, making sure that you maintain it. I'm 53, and I still the energy is abundant, and it's not just the coffee. So, but this is what I try to just make sure that you treat your body like a machine. And make sure
yeah,
you're giving it everything that it needs. If you realize that a certain type of oil is going to make your car run better, use that oil. You might not know how
yeah,
it works, but you can feel it running better. I
exactly.
just wanted to finish, Doc, on the story with the yogurt, because that did give me a good chuckle with the bacteria that makes the yogurt. Yes, it can be good for our gut, but it's not designed to be good for the gut, as you said. It's designed to make yogurt. If you could relate that story, and then finishing off with your product and the type of
Yes, yes.
yogurt it
So
would make.
yeah, we were
Yeah,
saying the other day that
yeah,
there was a question coming in on
mm,
Nicholas's radio show
mm,
from a listener,
mm,
and said, "Well, I take a lot of yogurt. Is that the same as taking a probiotic?" And the answer is, and the truthful answer is no, it isn't,
mm,
because the organisms that are in a yogurt that are used to make yogurt are very similar to probiotic organisms, same
yes,
type of families, if you like.
mm,
But the strains that are used to make yogurt have been trained over many, many generations to make fantastic yogurt, make that
mm,
lovely, creamy sort of consistency in a yogurt, and they've been trained to do that,
mm,
and they don't, and because they've been trained to do that, they've lost the attributes that make them very good probiotic bacteria, that where they can colonize and compete with all of the other
mm-hmm,
organisms in the gut. They've lost that competitiveness, if you like. They're
mm.
they're great at making yogurt. They're not great
They've gone
at
soft.
colonizing the gut.
Yeah,
They've gone soft,
yeah,
and vice versa.
mm,
When we try and make a yogurt with our strains, we get this. I mean, it looks like just gone off milk. I mean, it
right,
does what it should
yeah,
be doing. It's producing the acid, and you get that clear kind of thing at the top and
Yeah.
and the sort of curdled milk at the bottom. And that's our attempt at making yogurt. But that's because our bugs, they're used to being in the gut. They're not
Yeah.
used to making yogurt, and that's what happened.
Yeah. They're street fighters from the street. They're not from a posh neighborhood. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I mean the gut's quite
Exactly.
a tough environment to be in. So
Yes.
sure. Dr. Nigel Plummer, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. We know you're busy, and really for taking the time again, and at such short notice. It's
No,
greatly appreciated. So really, I
that's
know
great.
some of the lifters and the coaches are going to watch this. You're traveling, you're going far. Get yourself a good probiotic. Go to the website. And if you could just WhatsApp me your websites, I'll put it up in the description as well. So
Fabulous.
people can
Yeah.
go there and check that out. Thank you really so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it.
All right, Nicholas. Take care
Yeah.
and have a good show. Have a good
Comp.
competition
Yeah. It's
in the next.
there's over 700, I think it's over 740 athletes from the Commonwealth that are coming. And we got Singapore in for the first time. Malaysia's coming as well. So all fantastic comps. And with the World
Fantastic.
Masters, there's going to be well over 1,000 athletes competing, probably around about
Well,
1,100, 1,200. So it's going to be fantastic. I'll share the links with you as well if you
yes,
want to have a
please.
watch.
Please do. Yes.
It'll be a lot of fun. So awesome. Look, thank you for your time. And I do look forward to chatting again, and
All right.
appreciate you making the time for us. All right. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Nicholas. You are very
Cheerio.
welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Oh, that was Dr. Nigel Plummer. If you've come in late and haven't seen the full podcast, I encourage you, please go and watch this episode. Just in chatting to the doctor on my show, the Disco Medical Monday show on the 101.9 Chai FM radio station, just unpacking all of this stuff, and with the Commonwealth and the competition in my mind, because we've been so involved in these podcasts. It's vital for powerlifters. It's vital for any athlete, for anyone really, but for powerlifters, just given how the competitions work, what we're exposing our bodies to in training, in travel, the performance benefits, the enhancement benefits are really, can really be profound, just in terms of getting our gut health right. As the doctor said, he said 80% of our immunity, our immune system is in our gut. So just by doing that, we get to be much, much stronger. We get a strong immune system. You're not going to pick up, or you may not pick, potentially less likely to pick up niggles and bugs and stuff along the way in your travels coming out to the competitions. Or if you're really under heavy load, your immune system's a little bit more compromised than usual, you're not going to get sick. And these are all the things that we need to do. I mean, improved sleep, improved mood, improved nutrient absorption. You imagine having good long-term stable energy from the start of the squat warm up till your final deadlift. I think it'll be absolutely fantastic. That's a dream. If you're having to cut weight and you're not able to eat for a couple of hours, 10, 12, 18 hours before your weigh-in, and you're able then to get these nutrients absorbed quicker. You were saying, 5 to 10% extra absorption of the carbohydrates that they tested in these endurance athletes. Absolutely fantastic talk. Incredibly grateful. Dr. Plummer's the founder and the owner of Proven, and we really, I mean, I think they're the third or fourth largest in the world, and really grateful for the time. So please do go back and watch this full episode. Share it with your fellow athletes. Share it with your coaches. Share it with the communities. It's something so simple. Just start to take a probiotic, and a good quality probiotic, and see how it can positively affect your performance on the platform and your quality of life. If you are already taking one, we'd love to hear from you, and just know how it's worked for you, how it's affected you. So thank you so much. I had a message, Matt, just asking him if we could move his interview back a little bit later, because we did go a little bit over with the doctor. So we should be back in about 30 minutes with Matt Clough. Thank you, guys. You are watching Coffee and Conversations with Champions, the powerlifting edition and the probiotic edition. My name is Nicholas Ingle for Emmett Media. Thank you for your time. Share this, guys. It's vital. I know it's going to make a profound difference. If you've seen the number of videos I put out, my energy, because I take my probiotics, it's something that I've experienced the benefits of firsthand, and something I've experienced not having in my system, having my gut wiped out by a really powerful antibiotic. And it's not something I'm ever going to allow to happen again to myself, because it hammered me. I couldn't get a 175 deadlift off the floor, and it was terrible. So, and it took me nearly 18 months to get my health and my gut back to where it should be. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening to me talk about my gut. We'll see you in about 15 minutes with Matt.